Good day. Today is Thursday, October the 29th. You heard it here first. Tomorrow, October 30th, we're going to have our test over the Greek period. October the 30th test. Happy Halloween. So today we're going to finish up, and as it says there on your study guide or on your assignment sheet, we're going to finish up with a brief discussion of Alexander the Great, brief discussion of the philosophies that came out of this period of time, Epicureanism and Stoicism, but we'll get to that later on. First, let's talk about Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great is one of the most amazing characters in history. Right off the bat, Alexander the Great assumed control of his father's kingdom. His father, Philip of Macedon, was assassinated right in front of him. Alexander the Great stepped into the role as king of Macedonia at the age of 17, and he quickly then conquered all the rest of the Greek city-states, but that was not enough. Alexander the Great will conquer pretty much the then known world. As you saw in that very interesting top 10 things you didn't know about Alexander the Great video from Tuesday, Alexander the Great set out with an army of, I think it was like 35,000 infantry soldiers, Greeks, Macedonians, and about 12,000 cavalry, and proceeded to, in the next 10 years, conquer the great Persian Empire, all the way from his native Greece, Egypt, across the great expanse of Saudi Arabia, literally to the Indus River, where at the Indus River, his men said, "Look, Al, it's been 10 years, it's just one battle after another. We're done. We're kind of tired." Although, on the other hand, Alexander the Great was also loved and respected for much of his career by his men, although very clever, shrewd man. Alexander the Great was one of those kings who he himself would go to the forefront of the battle. He wasn't Xerxes, who would sit up on a hill and watch the battle transpire. I mean, one of the reasons why his men loved him was because the guy would be on one of the front lines. How the guy never got killed, I'll never know. But yeah, for 10 years, and as Alexander the Great marched across the Persian Empire, in every battle, he was faced by an enemy that had more soldiers than he did. And I'm talking about, 2 to 3 times, 4 times more soldiers than he did. And he still won. And somehow avoided getting killed right there. But, all leaders have their honeymoon period, and then in the end, people begin to dislike them. Alexander the Great began receiving death threats. And not only that, Alexander the Great was very, very suspicious. Alexander the Great actually had several of his own second in commands executed because he was suspicious of them. It wouldn't be the first time that a second in command would assassinate a leader, and he would oftentimes, if you prove to be too capable, as one of Alexander the Great's adjutant, as one of his assistants, as one of his lesser generals, you might find yourself on the bad end of a spear, Alexander the Great's spear. And so he did that, and so he had enemies, but he's very shrewd. There was the one time when they were marching across the desert, and the army was out of water, and they only had one vessel of water, one cup, one glass, one stein of water, and it was brought to Alexander, and in front of everybody, Alexander took the water and poured it out on the ground, saying, if all of us can't drink, none of us shall. And that actually endeared himself to the men. Now, other things he did were a little bit less scrupulous. For example, at a certain part, they'd been on the road 10 years. He told all of his soldiers, I want you to write letters home. And we'll send out couriers with the letters. And as soon as the couriers left the camp, got out of sight, that night they came back. And Alexander the Great went through all the letters, looking for disloyalty, looking for people who, might do him harm. And like I said, he did begin receiving death threats, and so he finally called it quits and went back and settled down in what is now Tehran for a while. And according to the story, Alexander by now, he's only 33. I mean, the legend is that after he had gotten so far up into Afghanistan to India, he was supposed to have cried because there were no more worlds to conquer. But at the age of 33, Alexander the Great got involved in of all things, drinking contest. He was said to have drank 6 quarts of wine. That's probably an exaggeration. But still, as you can imagine, if you drink so much alcohol, you get a condition called alcohol poisoning. And it is, it's a deadly thing. Well, in and of itself, Alexander the Great fell down, was down, he got sick, and it took him 10 days to die. During the time he was dying, and he was dying, he was laying in his tent. The men marched through the tent to give him their last regards. But here's the thing, Alexander the Great he had no children, left no successors. And so Alexander the Great's kingdom was divided up between his 3 primary generals, Antigonus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. Antigonus received Greece. Seleucus received what used to be the Persian Empire. Ptolemy received Egypt. Now here's the thing, though. That's enough for Alexander's conquest. That was great and awesome, but I mean, he built lots of cities, and as you saw in the film, he named most of them Alexandria. Not immodest, except for the one he named after his horse, Bucephalus. But anyway, Alexander the Great, though, was renowned throughout history. I mean, Julius Caesar was said to have been very upset when he found out that Alexander the Great died at age 33, having conquered the world. And Julius Caesar said, I haven't done anything yet, and I'm older than that. Alexander the Great's shield, the pattern that was on his shield, very distinctive pattern. If you go to the Vatican in Rome, that pattern of the shield is in the courtyard, same pattern. Napoleon, the great Napoleon, was said to have kept a copy of the history of Alexander, his exploits, on his nightstand, and he read it every night before going to sleep. So, he is widely regarded. Now, as it says there, Part A, Roman numeral 9, the Hellenistic period was a combination of traditional Greek culture. Remember that Alexander loved Greek culture, was trained by Aristotle, but also a mixing of the Persian, Egyptian, Indian, and other cultures of the East. While this Greek world prospered economically, it lost much of the spontaneity, ingenuity, and creativity of the ancient Greeks. And I will tell you another thing about it, too. Alexander the Great, when he set out to conquer the world, he had 2 goals. One was to conquer the world, of course. The other was wherever he went, he was going to make where he went Greek. He was going to make, their culture Greek. You're going to have to change, guys. You're becoming Greek now, adopting Greek alphabets, adopting Greek culture, and also some of the things the Greeks did that some people, like the Jews of the Bible, found offensive. In fact, this is covered in not the Old Testament, but in the Apocrypha. The Jews and the Greeks never got along. Fact of the matter is, the Jewish holiday Hanukkah, hope I pronounced that right, the one that occurs around Christmas, Hanukkah, is a celebration of a Jewish rebellion against Greek rule. The 8 days of Hanukkah, when, according to the tradition, the lamps in the Jewish temple stayed lit without being replenished with oil for 8 nights, 8 days and 8 nights, 8 days of Hanukkah. So, Alexander built the world's largest library in Alexandria, Egypt. Do you know of any other towns or cities that are named after this great ruler? Oh goodness, there's at least one in every state. And yeah, Alexandria, county seat of Campbell County. Alexander, I remember there was an Alexander City, Alabama, an Alexandria, Alabama. I'm sure there's one in every state, and it's named for Alexander the Great. So, all right, now let's finish up with me going crazy. Stupid lights. Now, Epicurus, and actually his full name was Epicurus of Samos. He was a philosopher, and these philosophies are going to come into play going forward, because there will be philosophies that the Greeks are. There'll be philosophies, that the Romans will adopt going forward. Greek philosophies adopted by the Romans. Fact of the matter is, the Romans pretty much adopted everything the Greeks did. Philosophies were part of it. Okay, who was Epicurus? Epicurus of Samos. He was a philosopher. The basic idea of his philosophy was to avoid pain. And, which sounds smart. However, later on, the Romans are going to take this philosophy and really twist it into what is called Epicureanism. And Epicureanism takes the philosophy and they go a step further. Not only avoid pain, but embrace pleasure. You say, what does that mean? Epicureanism is a philosophy that thinks you should go gangbusters. You should drink, and we're talking about alcohol here, drink as much as you can, eat as much as you can, have sex with everything that moves. If it feels good, do it. And this became a philosophy that a lot of Romans really plugged into, particularly Roman emperors. The problem with that, you say, oh, sounds good to me. Problem with that, though, is that one, it does after a while lead to kind of an emptiness. How you can only get so drunk, you can only eat so much, you can only, after a while, even sexual encounters become empty, and it's not healthy for a variety of reasons. Obviously, drinking too much, eating too much, and having sex with everything that moves, you end up with certain disease, STDs. But yeah, that was the essence of Epicureanism. Did Epicurus teach the philosophy that was soon credited to him and readily received by the Romans? Absolutely not. Now, the other philosophy came from was called Stoicism. It was founded by Zeno of Athens, and Stoicism is this. Stoicism is actually almost the direct opposite of Epicureanism. It means that you should embrace everything with courage. In fact, Stoicism has the 4 virtues. Let me see if I can think of them. Fortitude, which means courage. Temperance, which means, not overindulging. Fortitude, temperance. I'll learn the other 4 when we take Gladiator, but there's fortitude, temperance. There are 2 others, and they're all very righteous virtues. But anyway, to understand Stoicism, it's about this. The Stoic believes that this is how you should react if you find out that you lost everything you ever had, and there's a death in the family, and that you are going to die of an extremely painful disease, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. This should be your reaction. Now, on the other hand, Stoicist also believes that if one day you win the lottery, you are named the world's most sexy human being, you are given everything you ever wanted, you win your greatest victory, that this is how you should react. And if you understand that, you understand Stoicism. It means meeting life's pleasures and pain and tragedies and triumphs with courage, but also aplomb. You accept them. You accept what life deals you. Okay, finally, Euclid. Euclid was one of the great Greek mathematicians. There are so many. Archimedes, Euclid. Euclid came up with Euclidean geometry, plane geometry, not as in, but plane geometry. Yeah, that's probably what a number of you have already taken in high school. And you know what? That's the end of our unit, and we will have a test tomorrow, which is Friday. I'll put it on the announcements. So let's end for today. Thank you all very much.